several years ago, when we called Rebecca as our senior pastor, we got an unexpected, or perhaps it was expected, add-on gift. We got an amazing and talented and active family. Their children, James and Caroline, are musicians and athletes combined. That's perhaps unusual, at Decatur High School. Husband Joel, we've known about, at many lectures in his band, the Dill Pickers, or whatever it's called. But actually, I think in every introduction, you should gain a new fact that you didn't know about the speaker. And here's your new fact. Way back in 2007, most of your memories don't go that far, Joel was a lecturer at Trinity on a topic called Psalms, the Sight and Sounds of Biblical Prayers. So we knew Joel before we knew Rebecca or James or Caroline, but he's here today. You know him well. You know how active he is. I'll give you a couple little other facts about him. He's a prolific writer. He's got a book that you can buy on Amazon, believe it or not, called Yahweh's Winged Face in the Psalms. Obviously, that has a lot to do with the arts, and Joel has a lot to do with interpretation of Scripture and the arts. Anyway, Joel, I won't take any more of your time. Go ahead and instruct us about this.
Thank you, Matt.
So I guess hold your questions and really kind of let Joel get through a very compact presentation.
You shake my nerves and you rattle my brain. That kind of love drives a man insane. Oh, what a thrill. Goodness gracious. Great balls of fire. It works. All right, y'all. Great to see everybody. Thanks for your patience as we get our sound right. We're going to probably pull it down. It'll be great. Yeah, I'm going to be too loud if we stay like this. All right. Now, that's better. It's great to be with y'all today. My goal is to get you out of here by like 10:40. 10:40. That way you all get a seat, you can enjoy, you can prepare yourself. And my larger goal, beyond getting you out of here at 10:40, is to give you some tools for listening. Not just today, but for the rest of your musical lives, and especially your worshiping lives. My one of my great delights is to be able to listen to the choir sing in this church. It is a special privilege, and frequently I'm reduced to tears out there in the service, just kind of overtaken by the beauty of what is happening on a daily basis. And so what I'd like to describe is what is happening on a daily basis or weekly basis in this church. What is happening is biblical texts are being interpreted. And because I'm a Bible scholar, I get really excited about that idea. Biblical texts are being interpreted in two primary ways. The first way that biblical texts are being interpreted is through the sermon. The preaching moment is a time where the preacher, often my wife, takes a text from antiquity and she tries to provide background, context, literary context, historical context, social context, and then brings those ancient words into a brand new modern context in Buckhead, Atlanta, Georgia. And those words that were old now have a chance to be reinterpreted for a new audience, they always take on new meanings as they're moved from one context to another. That's one kind of biblical interpretation that's happening every Sunday. And you're used to thinking about that as biblical interpretation. Another way that the Bible is being interpreted is through tones. The Bible is being intoned every Sunday in hymns here and there, but especially in the anthems that we hear. That is a moment where ancient words get reframed, get intoned, and get reinterpreted for an audience right now. And as we're listening to the reframed, reinterpreted biblical text, we're hearing that in our own moment in Atlanta, in Buckhead, in 2024, but we're also hearing how the text had been interpreted in the time of the composer. So really, we get to hear two separate moments of biblical interpretation whenever we hear an anthem. We hear the moment, we hear how Norman is interpreting the composer's ideas, and then we hear how the composer was interpreting the biblical text in his or her moment. Now, we need to reframe how we listen, in my humble opinion. We need to reframe how we listen to all of the service for biblical interpretation. We obviously hear it in the sermon, but we have this master interpreter of music and extraordinary interpreters of texts that are moving throughout history, and Norman is bringing them in front of you and saying, look, here's how great composers have interpreted biblical texts over the centuries. And we can just sit back and say, wow. Many of us, that's the extent of it. We just say, wow, or that was good, or it was kind of good, or I didn't really feel that one. But that's usually the extent of our engagement with that moment of biblical interpretation. What I would like for us to do is to have some tools to listen well to the biblical interpretation that's happening every Sunday in music. And that is a gift, because when you can listen to, you'll not just hear the Mozart's Requiem today. I could spend 30 minutes talking just about Mozart's Requiem, which would be fantastic, but you've got text about it, you've got Wikipedia, fine. What I'd rather do is give you some tools for listening so that every week you can enjoy what's happening and appreciate what's happening to the text when it's intoned in front of you in the service. So our goal today is listening well. And in order to listen well, we need to start listening. So I'm going to play for us about 2 minutes of the beginning of the first part of Mozart's Requiem. And then I want you to do your best to listen well, and then I'm going to ask for some people to say what they heard. Okay? I'm going to give you about 2 minutes. So put your ears on, get ready, and listen however you normally listen, but listen hard for what you're hearing. Okay. beautiful. That, by the way, was the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra with Norman in a recording in 2006. Beautiful. What did you hear? Yes, Tom. Emotion. You heard, okay, be more specific. What kind of emotion did you hear? Well, what? Human emotion. Any particular emotions that came across? Yes. Sadness. What made it feel sad? A kind of foreboding sense. Mm-hmm. Right.
I pictured a battle. Not like the Civil War, but not old-fashioned, but a battle historically many years ago. In my head, I was thinking this was the theme of the useless, horrible battle.
Yeah, so it has a sense, there's a kind of a sense of threatening sounds. Okay, cool, that's great. Yeah. A journey of discovery. Say, how did that, okay. Mm-hmm. That's great. So it has a sense of growth over time. So we started off kind of quiet. Yeah, Halsey.
It sounded to me like a conversation, too, between two different emotions that did not agree, building to this crescendo of conflict.
Two different emotions in conflict that didn't agree. Yes.
He used the violins as the rhythm section.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
And the woodwinds to carry the melody, which then got passed off to the chorus.
Yes, that's great. So now we've started talking about some interesting things. Orchestration. We've talked about melodies. We talked about passing on. We've actually brought up the idea of counterpoint. And counterpoint is kind of a weird word, but that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how the ideas get developed over time. Any other things that you heard that you want to name? You heard a minor key, absolutely. That D minor. Oof. Anybody else want to say what they heard? Yeah. A questioning, okay. What made it sound questioning to you? What will happen? Yeah. How do you describe musically the feeling of questioning? What will happen when we die? That's a profound question, and it's a profound question to just try to use words to describe. But then imagine, all right, I'm going to try to create the sound of questioning what's going to happen when you die. So I'm Mozart. That's how it starts. Sorry. Anybody know what that interval is? It's going to be reinterpreted in Dies Irae. Yes, that opening interval. Did anybody hear it? Did anybody watch the movie Jaws? That is a half step. And you know Jaws. And what does that do to you? It makes me feel a little bit anxious. It's unstable, right? Where are we? Am I here? Where am I? Okay, now I'm in D minor. So an idea of a questioning, an instability, a great composer like Mozart says, I know what to do. I know how to create that anxiety about death. I'll start with a half step. Beep, beep, doo, doo. And then I'll allow that half step to be passed along through various woodwind instruments at the beginning. And then I will allow the choir to start with that half-step interval, and I'll just climb up the minor scale, but just so much. Sorry, here's... That's the dominant melodic motif. If you asked me what the melody of this beautiful piece of music is, that's what it is. That's the start. Da 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 da. Ooh, that's kind of... that is questioning. That gives us a kind of sense of concern about what's going to happen. So as we're using our listening skills, I would like for us to think about how melodies get developed, over time. So melodic development is the idea that you can have a very simple series of musical tones, and that you can develop them over time to create new emotions, new layers, and new sounds, new colors. So in the first part of the Requiem, we have which instruments introducing this melody? We have, now it's all in, Fagotto is bassoon, corni di bassetto is basset horns, which are like clarinets, but a little bit bigger. So we have these kind of reedy, dark-sounding instruments, and they're introducing a melodic theme, da-do-da-da-da. Now, if you're reading music and you're kind of wondering what notes those are, there's a bunch of different clefs at work, so relax. If it doesn't look like D, C sharp, it's because of different clefs. But what we have basically is we have the first bassoon introducing that, and as the bassoon is opening up that melodic idea, then we have the introduction of that same melodic idea starting on the fifth of the scale. So here we are in the key of D minor. And in the middle of that, we have, hear that? So this is starting on the fifth, an A, which is a fifth above D, and it's going, you hear that, Jaws? That minor third? So what's going on is that Mozart is presenting a musical idea and then developing that musical idea over time. So as you're sitting out there in the audience, what your first thing that you can listen to is, if you're just interested in the tones and how the tones get developed over time, you can tune your ear to hear a little melodic thing and then watch and listen, because that little melodic thing will get developed in incredible ways over the course of 2, 5, 10, 30 minutes. A great composer can take the tiniest melodic idea and keep your attention for a very long time. We all know Beethoven's Fifth. Ba-ba-ba-bum. Very simple motif. Ba-ba-ba-bum. Ba-ba-ba-bum. But we've changed it. Same idea, but moved it into a different register. Ba-ba-ba-bum. Ba-ba-ba-bum. I'm not singing it well, but you get the idea. Any small melodic idea can be repeated and developed over time, and then suddenly you are into it. You might not know why you're into it, but because of the way your brain is wired to connect tones to other tones, you will just be carried along. And you might not ever be able to say, oh, well, actually what I heard there was a D minor, a descent to the leading tone, then rising up a minor third, and I've heard it like 17 times across the Requiem, but your ear will be like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. It's great. I liked it. Mozart's like, and I know why you liked it, because I provided you a beautiful melodic idea, and then I developed it over a long period of time. So the first thing for us to do as we're listening to Norman's music, whenever it occurs, whether it's choir or organ, is to listen for a melodic idea and how that melodic idea is developed over time. First lesson, melodic development. Second lesson, second lesson is here. This idea of text painting. So I really want you to remember some things. I want you to remember how to think about melodic development, and then I want you to remember this idea called text painting. Has anybody ever come across this term before? Text painting? It's kind of a weird term. It's kind of text, you think about like literature, and painting, you think about art, but it's really about music. Text painting is really about music. Here's what text painting is. Let's see. Text painting. Text painting is attending to tone, timbre, and time. So as you're listening to anything that Norman does for the rest of your life, think about these 3 T's: tone, timbre, and time. What do these words mean? Well, tones are just tones, notes. Bunch of tones. The notes. When a composer starts the process of turning a text, a sacred text, a secular text, a biblical text, whatever, into music, the first thing the composer decides is, what kind of tones will I use to set this text to music? Mary had a little lamb. Okay, those are the tones that I'm going to set that text to music. Great. Now, the decisions that I make as a composer I have an infinite number of decisions to make when I decide I need to set the Requiem Mass, the Mass for the dead, into tones. What will I do? Which tones will I choose? That's the first question that you don't have to ask because Mozart did the work, but you can appreciate the kind of notes that Mozart has used. So listen for the tones. Then the next thing to do is to listen for the timbre. Now, timbre, you're looking at the screen and you're thinking, that looks like timber to me. That's because of some faux French that has slipped in to English. Faux French, you like that? So this word, which in French you would actually pronounce more like timbre, timbre, timbre. My wife is a French major. She knows all these things. But the timbre is the color of the sound, the way that a tone exists in the world. It has a lot of options. So you have a regular tone, say it's this tone, it's the piano tone, but it's basically, there's the D. But you can also create a tone for that D that would be more tone. You hear it's a different tone, a different timbre. And then you could go close it up like this, and there's a timbre. And then if you have a bassoon, they automatically have a different timbre. And if you have a clarinet, they're going to have a different timbre. And then if you have a trumpet, they're going to have a different timbre. So as you're listening to a text, what you're seeing is an interaction of tones, notes, timbre, colors of the notes through various orchestrations, and then finally time. And time is one of the most interesting things because as you're setting a text to music, you can decide how fast you're going to move through a text. So in the Requiem, we have some words that just get basically 1 or 2 notes per word. So that's a very quick progression of time. So you got a text, you're turning it into time in the real world, and it's happening pretty fast. So sometimes composers just want to work through text. Other times, the composers want to say, y'all, listen. Listen to this word. I'm overdriving the microphone right now. I'm sorry, darling. Listen to this word. This word is really important. And what they do, not overdriving the microphone, is they take that one piece of text and they stretch it out over a long period of time. So as you're listening to how a text gets turned into sounds, listen for the notes, listen for the color of the notes, the timbre, and then listen to how long it takes for a composer to move you from one word to the next. Sometimes it'll be fast, and sometimes it'll be very slow. And that slowness can happen by a ponderous tempo, or one of my favorite things that can happen is something called melisma. Anybody know what that word is? Melisma? Melisma is when you have one word and a lot of notes that deal with that word. So an example of melisma in this text, oh, there's a great one. So you see up there at the top, the dona eus. Look how many notes Mozart is using for this word dona. And we're wondering, okay, Mozart, why did you do that? Well, because Mozart is saying, this is the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is this word dona eus, dona eus, and he's repeating it. So he didn't just say it once. He's using that one phrase and putting it in a melisma, putting a bunch of little notes on it, and then he's repeating it and doing it again. So he really wants you to pay attention. He's trying to make a point. And what is the word that he's saying? He's saying, give, 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 O God, give them rest. And he's layering the idea of give. It's a plea that's coming over and over across, and it becomes more emotionally affecting when you realize that Mozart is expending a lot of time on this idea of give them rest. So all those kinds of emotions that we had about the text, just within listening to 1 minute of it, we're like, oh, it felt urgent, it felt threatening. We didn't get to the part where it felt really imploring, but that's how those emotions come across through the techniques of composition. And you, as great listeners, can start to think about the 3 T's: tone, text, and timbre every time. Tone, timbre, and time. Every time you listen to Norman, you can put both of your ears on and start to hear what a composer is doing with the text. All right, so it's now 10:30, and I've gotten through about 1/4 of the things I would like to say, but I won't keep you past 10:40, I promise. What I would like to do, though, is I would like to just quickly show a couple of things and then listen real fast. So here's the text of the Requiem, and those of you who know Latin can just read the left-hand side of the screen. You're welcome. Those of you who would like to see the gloss in English can check out the right-hand side of the screen. But there's the plea. Grant them eternal rest, O Lord. Requiem aeterna, eternal rest, give them, O Lord. And lux perpetua luceat eis, and light perpetual grant to them, or shine on them. I love how the Latin, et lux perpetua luceat. Lux and luceat are basically the same word. One's the verb form and one's the noun form. So it's really, and shine perpetually, you're shining on them. So it's a kind of double emphasis on this word of light or shining. And we're going to see in just a second how Mozart identifies that one word as super important for the first half of this piece. So we have an opportunity to listen to how Mozart brings this word light, which appears to be important based on its repetition in the text. Mozart has a chance to make it important in his setting of the music. So I want you to listen to how that word appears. Okay, so let's start again. Now, listen for motivic development, and listen for how the text moves through tones, through timbre, and through time. And I'll try to keep you sort of looking at the score if you so would be interested in doing that. Motivic development. This is counterpoint. We're now in this part. Okay, so you're hearing, sorry to interrupt, it's so beautiful, but you're hearing counterpoint, spacing out the introductions of a melodic theme through the instruments, and then you're seeing the spacing out of the melodic theme through the voices. Note we have, just like we saw in the instruments, that's the bass line, and then we see the tenor line is taking it. Same idea that we just heard it in the woodwinds. Now we're seeing it and watching it occur. But here it's happening faster. The time is, the layers are much thicker because there's only a couple beats, and we're going to see a movement from the low voices all the way up to the high voices. We see this is vocal counterpoint. I want you to listen for when the vocal polyphony, the vocal counterpoint, changes into homophony. So a choir has a chance to sing a bunch of different things. That's polyphony. And then there's a moment when they all sing the same word together. Listen for that. Did you see when the counterpoint stopped? The counterpoint stopped. Give us rest, give us rest, give us rest, give us rest. And then, and light perpetual. Everybody's at the same time. And we've moved, interestingly, if you care about harmony, we've moved from this D minor sound. When we get to the Lux Perpetua, we go for D minor to its relative major, F major. And we're thinking, light feels bright and possible, and there's just a chance that light is going to shine. And my favorite moment in this whole first movement is this sopranos hitting the high G on that Luciat. So a great example of text painting is moving from polyphony then to homophony and then hitting the big moment with the sopranos at the high note. That's a classic compositional technique. And it's so fun when you hear it. We're just going to hear it one more time, and then we're going to stop. So, we're going to hear it one more time, just those 2 minutes. And then we'll be primed for Okay, so now you're ready to listen to the next 30 minutes of Mozart's Requiem. Thanks for bearing with us through all the technical things, and thanks for listening well. So, cheers.